Hello everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of F122 Driver Career Mode here. Today we are headed to my favorite track on the whole calendar in Formula 1, the whole calendar of motorsports. I love Singapore so much. However, I'm not sure if I'm necessarily looking forward to this one very much, and I'll explain why. You see Max Verstappen, though, 56-point lead over Charles Leclerc coming into this episode. So it should be an interesting episode, and seeing how this kind of plays out as you see us touching down in the Singapore area, now ready to go for free practice one. Now, why am I not looking forward to this Grand Prix very much? It is supposed to be pouring rain the whole Grand Prix. The whole Grand Prix. Yes, everything, the whole time. It's going to be a long one. So basically, Singapore, as you guys know, if you're a Formula 1 fan, the most physically demanding circuit on the calendar. One of the longest races, if not the longest race every season, basically. And, well, it's even a difficult race to do in the video game. But then you throw pouring rain on top of that. Oh, good heavens, we are in for a night in Singapore. But at the same time, I'm not going to let that down my spirits, or I guess you could say dampen my spirits, because it's going to rain. And we'll see, what happens here. Now, this is free practice one. Singapore is a difficult track to do practice programs, so all I literally did was track acclimatization, and even track acclimatization in Singapore is more difficult than other circuits here. I barely went purple on most of the gates there. So we ended up wrapping it up pretty quickly here and focusing our attention here on qualifying under the lights. Look at that beautiful Ferris wheel. I have a fear of Ferris wheels. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think I'll ever go on one. But here we are, under the lights of Singapore, ready to go. Now, qualifying, I don't know what happened, but the last 4 or 5 Grand Prix, we have really struggled in qualifying, and I was kind of expecting the same in Singapore, because qualifying in Singapore is pretty difficult as well, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. The last episode we qualified dead last, but that one was kind of expected because I didn't really put in an effort due to the 40-place grid penalty. Here we are, though, in Q1, trying to get a decent time and one lap under our belt, and actually lap 1 would be relatively competitive. It wasn't great, but it was good enough, basically. I come through to cross the line, we briefly go P2. Later in the session, though, it put us down to about P9, and I was looking for a little bit more time. I was on the same set of tires. I didn't want to use the second set, but I completely throw it anyways because I spin around, so that was the end of my Q1, but it was fine. We had still advanced into Q2, P9 at this current time, and that's also where we would end up here. You see Zhou Guan Yu, Fernando Alonso, not sure what happened to Alonso, all the way down in 19th place. A terrible effort there from the Spaniard, as he's going to have a lot of work to do in the Grand Prix. Here we are, late Q2 now for my first lap, now on a brand new set of fresh, soft tires, and obviously P15 on the grid, looking to get into that top 10, and I knew it was going to be a bit of a challenge. We were P9 in Q1, usually Q2 gets a little bit quicker, and that's where I'm going to be seeming to struggle over the last few races. Now, you can see right here, plus 0.105, so over a tenth off there of the top 10. So trying to find a little bit more time here in Sector 2. Sector 2 would go quite a bit better than Sector 1 did for myself here, getting down towards this hairpin. This hairpin, you can make or break your lap just in that hairpin alone, but we managed to find a bit more time. Still a little bit of ways to go. We're still out at this point in time of making it into Q3, and then right there I clipped the barrier, and that's actually going to damage the left side of the front wing, and that might be all it takes to knock us out there. You can see what a light green, maybe close to a yellow right there as we come through the final corner. It's not going to be enough. It's P11, so we were close, but obviously close doesn't matter in anything. It doesn't get you anywhere when you're close, so P11 is what it's going to be in Singapore. Another rough qualifying effort. Now, look at that. We missed it by less than half a tenth. Schumacher, just a couple hundredths there between us, so frustrating, but obviously at the same time a little bit of a boost because we weren't that far off. So let's head to the grid.
Against the spectacular backdrop of the Singapore skyline, Formula 1 returns once again to do battle in what tends to become something of an endurance race, with the notorious sauna-like temperatures in the cockpit making for an extremely physically challenging race. We have a high risk of a safety car here today, I think, as the abundance of tight corners mixed with these wet conditions could put a few cars off and into the barriers. 23 turns then, 13 to the left and 10 to the right, make up the 3.1-mile lap of Marina Bay. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position. And Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Perez, Kevin Magnussen and Albon, Mick Schumacher, Golden Boy, Ricciardo. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Pierre Gasly, Ocon, Tsunoda and Sir Lewis Hamilton. They've taken a grid penalty. And Norris, Stroll, Sainz, Robert Schwartzman and Guan Yu Zhou. Fernando Alonso. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Nicholas Latifi. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today?
It's wet. It's going to be wet all Grand Prix long, all night long. But like I said, it's not dampening my spirits. You can see there on the top side of the strategy, it's just wet, wet, wet. So it's going to be a grueling Grand Prix. It's going to be very difficult to pass. That is for sure. It's going to be an interesting one. Let's get ready.
Right then, the formation lap has started. And I must say, the weather conditions aren't the best today for visibility and for grip. As each driver performs this lap, they'll be wanting to settle in and concentrate, as this race, in these conditions, will require a lot of focus. We're almost ready to start the race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
I mean, I don't mind being moist, but I mean, not in a race car, and I'm already drenched in here, man.
Well, we will be staying dry over here in the garage, so have fun out there.
I am so glad Mark wants us to have fun here tonight under the lights in Singapore, ready to go racing. And like I said, this is going to be, I would say, probably my toughest challenge in F1 22 so far. Singapore Grand Prix in the pouring rain, the longest Grand Prix of the season. Here we are alongside our teammate of Ricciardo, who took that grid penalty. So we do move up, as you can see, that Williams Porsche coming up to the back of the grid. That's Nicholas Latifi, his teammate of Albon. Don't count him out tonight. He's got a pretty good starting position here, right in front of us, P6, so pay attention to him. It's George Russell on pole. We're ready to go racing. We're lights out and underway here in the Singapore Grand Prix. The start is going to be crucial because it's going to be hard to overtake, and you can see I already lose 2, 3, maybe 4 positions. That lunge one back up the inside of Ocon, and now with someone behind me. There might have been Norris tried to send one up the inside. I'm slipping inside, and already we go down to P10 on the start. Albon up into 5th place. Russell ahead right there of everybody now. You can see in the background, you got Perez. You got Perez side by side with Leclerc. Verstappen's in 2nd place. Leclerc gets clear of Perez. That's big right there because we already know about the championship battle between him and Verstappen. Look at that. The Williams Porsche. Alex Albon in the top 5. What a start for him here now as that team is continuing to improve. We've been starting every episode. We briefly look at the R&D chart. Williams Porsche has been slowly but surely going up and up and up week after week. Do not count that team out. Lewis Hamilton there scrapping it out with one of the AlphaTauri drivers. Now he is once again didn't look great in Monza. Can he maybe have a bit of a turn of fortune here this time out now as he gets ahead of Yuki Tsunoda now? As you can see, the rest of the field just kind of settling in here, including myself, just trying to settle in and get into I guess you could say the swing of things basically now, as you can see myself heading down towards the hairpin. But you know, like I said, this is going to be the toughest Grand Prix I think I've ever done in F1 22. It's just about keeping the car on the surface. Don't hit the walls, don't crash, and don't spin out, and try to hang with the competition. Unlike Monza, so Monza I ran a dry setup and it was wet the whole way. It was for the intermediate compound tires that we ran. You can see myself struggling for a grip, but I was actually running a wet setup for this Grand Prix, but that didn't seem to help very much. I was so struggling, and you can see 8/10ths behind Ricciardo, but these first few laps I was kind of finding out the hard way the limit of the car, and you can see myself slipping and sliding. A big moment right there. We're all over the place, and that's going to open the door for Esteban Ocon. The Frenchman's going to look up the inside, down into the right-hander. I didn't give him a lot of room to work with, and sliding around again, we save it. But now we were 3 seconds back on lap 3. Yellow flags behind us actually there, and it's actually going to be for Carlos Sainz. Hold on a second. Good heavens, Esteban Ocon just about ended my life. He just absolutely sent one up the inside right there unexpectedly. We're side by side down the straightaway. Sainz is out. We get back ahead of Esteban Ocon there, and now 3.9 seconds back of Ricciardo 4 seconds. The virtual safety car comes out, so Sainz is out with a mechanical failure already. So we go, of course, a whole lap just about before we get back racing here. So 4.3 seconds I had given up in about a lap and a half to Daniel Ricciardo before that virtual safety car. But I was able to, fortunately, in that couple of lap process, I found the limit of the car without crashing the car or hitting a wall, which was, you know, pretty beneficial for me. So I was able to kind of settle down and basically just focus on, okay, well, I know what I can do now, so let's maximize what I can do without going over that line of what we need to be doing is what, you know, which I did earlier. So you can start to see lap 9. These laps are going by quick in the video. I can tell you they were not going by quick in the actual recording. This was miserable. Lewis Hamilton now on the back of Lando Norris. This is lap 10. Hamilton only in 13th place, going for 12th place over his fellow British driver. They're side by side down towards the left-hander. Hamilton should be able to complete this overtake here next into the right-hander, and you're going to see right here Lando's not going to have a whole lot, and he just can't make it happen. Can't get the power down. Lewis Hamilton into 12th place, and Norris was really struggling on the wet compound tire for whatever reason compared to other drivers, but I myself was starting to actually close in to the back of Daniel Ricciardo. Now, there was basically no overtaking happening at all in the field at all. The only way you're going to basically overtake here tonight, other than the odd moment where Hamilton was able to go and pass Norris, is basically if somebody makes a mistake or locks up. And speaking of that, Lando Norris locking up here on the front end of Yuki Tsunoda. That allows Tsunoda to go through, so Norris's struggles continue here. And it was lap 15 coming to lap 16 where we saw Max Verstappen coming in, and he brought Charles Leclerc. So the two championship drivers that are fighting for it this season come in at the same time. George Russell has been comfortably out in front, and he would eventually make a pit stop, and he would be fine as well. He would stay out in front of Max Verstappen as well as Leclerc. Here I am coming in the same lap now, so pitting from what, P10, and just hoping that if I pit a lap or so earlier that I might be able to gain a little bit. I don't really know if it's going to matter too much, but nonetheless, the wet tire off and a fresh set of wet tires go back on the car. Pierre Gasly is going to be exiting just in front of myself. That's kind of where my target is right now. We might be able to run him down and go for an overtake on him and move ourselves up into P9. And don't rule out, of course, potential mechanical failures in front of us. Is actually get a warning for crossing the pit line on the exit there. I just simply drove right over it misjudged my pace on the exit of the corner in these wet conditions. But you can see it now as everything cycled through. Hamilton got up to P11. It was 4.4 seconds behind me, running me down. Ricciardo gained a few positions, so he was up to what, P7 at this point in front of Kevin Magnussen. He was in a Haas sandwich as he had Schumacher in front of him. You see on the track map though, it was currently Russell, Verstappen, and then we had McLaren, yellow flag. That's not a driver, that's Perez is the driver, and you can see right there it's going to be a mechanical failure, the second mechanical failure on the night here. Perez is out in Singapore, so very unfortunate hit for him. Fantastic for me as we move up another spot into P9. Hamilton now moves into the points, but I had finally kind of found my pace here in the wet. It took me half the race, but I had finally gotten really comfortable, and I was actually closing in on all the cars in front of us. Alex Albon is leading this group of cars right here. He is currently in 4th place. Albon having an absolutely epic night here in Singapore. As you can see, going through the grid now, approaching these final 10 laps. George Russell out in front over Max Verstappen, Leclerc, Albon there. You look a little bit further down the order, and I mean, how about Nicholas Latifi, 15th place, having a decent night here for that Williams Porsche team as well. And then we have Lando Norris all the way at the bottom of the grid. He's just been struggling all night long. Alonso, who started last, has only made actually one overtake, and that was on Norris, just showcasing how difficult it is to pass here in Singapore in the pouring rain. So, like I said, the only way you can really pass here in Singapore in the pouring rain is if somebody makes an error, a lockup, etc. And there was not a lot of that happening here. So, it was really just a mental fight against yourself to get through this Grand Prix. I didn't feel like I was fighting anybody else, basically. I was fighting myself to just try and hang on and survive. It's 100%, I can tell you right now, the most difficult Grand Prix I've ever ran in this game. Gasly with a lock up there into the corner. That moves us up into P8. Thank you, Pierre. I was hoping to see something like that happen. So up into 8th place to go. Or up into 8th place with less than 10 laps to go, I mean, now, as we are closing in on the back of the Haas of Kevin Magnussen. And then you got Ricciardo, Schumacher, Albon there in the rest of this group of cars. However, I knew it was going to be extremely difficult to be able to make any overtakes at this point without somebody making that error, like I already said, that we kind of need to have, and we just saw that proven with me passing Pierre Gasly. I somehow don't get damaged. I was slipping and sliding, and then watch this. On the exit of the right-hander, I'm going to have a huge moment right there. We save it, but I was struggling quite a bit for grip. Fortunately, not hitting anything in that process, but I couldn't do anything. I was stuck. I would get to a certain point where I'd get, towards that back gearbox of Magnussen, but then, he would get a better exit out of a corner, and that's all it took was really one corner to almost reset a whole lap of progress for me, for him to just get one better exit than me. So it just wasn't happening. We were approaching now the final lap of the Grand Prix, and this was about a 2-hour recording for me from start to finish in the Grand Prix, when usually a dry Grand Prix is about an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes, so that kind of gives you some insight on how long I was here doing this race, slipping and sliding, hanging on for dear life. It's George Russell, however, coming through to win in Singapore by 8 seconds. He pulled away continuously all Grand Prix long. Max Verstappen is going to still extend his championship lead over Charles Leclerc as he finishes second, Leclerc in third. We're coming through the final few corners. A race against my own brain really is just kind of the way this Grand Prix went, but we held on. P8, honestly, can't complain about that, as I have a huge moment there, tearing the front wing off the car as we crossed the line. Thank goodness that didn't actually break the front wheels, which on simulation damage, I'm not sure how that didn't happen, but we crossed the line for P8. Nicholas Latifi, driver of the day. How about that? Let's head to the podium.
And Mercedes have pulled off a great victory here today. Natalie Pinkham, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on the circuit and have come out on top.
Well, it was a wet Grand Prix, a very uneventful Grand Prix. As I said, it was really just a race against yourself today, or tonight in Singapore, not against anybody else. It was just about, doing your own thing and bringing the car home, basically. And we saw George Russell set the pace, and no one really had anything for the Mercedes driver here today. And that continues to highlight, though, however, the struggles of Lewis Hamilton this season. While his teammate of Russell's up there towards the top 3 in the standings, and here he is winning in Singapore, Hamilton's lucky to crack into the points at all here this season. So it's really, at this point, Lewis needs to be focusing on the next season, which will be the final season of this F1 career mode now that we've got an official release date for the game of F1 23. So Hamilton's really just got to focus on season 3 and just do what he can. But yeah, you see the rest of the finishing order there. We're going to check out the standings and see how that has been changed up. Albon for the Williams Porsche, P4. A great night for them. Our teammate of Ricardo in P6, while we are, of course, P8. You can see we gained a spot over Perez in the points. He's dropped down to P6 now. Russell still in third place. And, of course, the most important thing at this point as well is that Constructors' Championship battle, especially for our battle with Mercedes. While it didn't really get help today, as you can see, they closed within 5 points of McLaren. So, in Ferrari and Red Bull, virtually unchanged. It's basically a very similar gap to what it was after Monza. So that's going to wrap it up for us. We head to Japan in the next one. We're going to take off and head over there. And I'll see you guys then. Have a great day, everybody.